Well, good evening, and I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting for the town of Saugeen Shores. Extend a welcome to everyone in the chambers this evening. The first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of your responsibility to do so. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda. We have no delegations. The next item on the agenda then is a general government report. It has to do with the staff report on the Sutherland property development, and our CAO, David Smith, is going to present the report.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As Council is well aware that we purchased this property for the primary purpose of achieving our Recreation Master Plan recommendations of additional ball diamonds by creating an outdoor sports facility. The specific details of the elements of that portion of the property, including the number of facilities, the type of facilities, have not been confirmed yet, and we'll be starting community consultation on that in the near future. We do recognize that the Recreation Master Plan has some pretty specific objectives that we're planning on achieving through that development. An additional benefit of the purchase was a potential development on the east side of the property for employment lands. Is something that supports our economic development strategy as well. This portion of the site, the employment lands will, if developed, advance many aspects of our economic development plan and takes advantage of the growth and the interest in our community for employment lands, whether it's manufacturing or warehousing or office space, and it will really help us if we develop it or develop it solely or in partnership in creating a more diverse local economy. Currently, we're in an atypical situation for us. We are potentially the developer of the property, and we have started initiatives and steps to develop it, just like a developer would. So we have applied for zoning changes, the first of which should come back to planning in August for consideration. But we also have, much like developers, we also have costs to develop the property, things that developers would have to pay if they were the developer, things like archaeological studies, servicing plans, traffic plans. We certainly want to do a financial analysis. One of our goals is to make this project as self-funding as possible, and some possible project management costs. The funding request is to access reserve funds during lame duck in an open and transparent way. And I've been purposely vague on what exactly they'll be used for. I can name some of the things that we know will be coming, but there will be anticipated costs or potentially. As an example, as we go through the zoning process, if there's an appeal during the zoning process, we may need funds to access that. The amount is a placeholder amount, which means that we'll tap into it but by no means are we planning on taking all of that money and spending all of that money. We've been frugal to date, working with the county for the zoning. We've been doing it in-house. So I do plan on reporting to council at key milestones. So I will end there, Mr. Mayor, and if there's questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, David. And the recommendation is that council allocates $150,000 as a placeholder funding to further the development of the former Sutherland property, and that the funding source be the future capital reserve at this time. Any questions or comments? Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will be supporting this recommendation. And just my only question is, Dave, we as councillors get a lot of interaction opportunities in the community, and one of the questions we get most often as it relates to this project is sort of timelines. People are saying, when's it going to be before there's things happening there and before there's baseball there? Can you give us an idea of just a general? I know it'll be vague because there's lots of hurdles to cross yet, but when do you think your glass ball tells you that we're going to actually see some action and activities out there?
Thank you very much for the question. So I will be vague on it. When you go through a zoning process, there's a lot of wild cards in it. Certainly, they will start to see activity on site in I would say in the next month or two, just in terms of an archaeological study. We are being somewhat sympathetic to the harvest. There's winter wheat, I believe, still on the property, and that should be coming off in the next week or two. After that is done, we'll be doing our phase 2 archaeological study, so people will start to see things happen. We've also been working with the Sutherlands in terms of the gravel stockpiles that are on there. We're planning on using that for the police building, so that is a cost-effective approach to us. Once the pit license is expired, we can't take material off the site, so we've worked with the Sutherlands to extend the pit license, although we own the property. And then our community consultation will start to happen over the next 3 months. They may see construction activity, I'm suspecting now in 2019. I think it's unlikely at this point that we'll have a ball in play in 2019. Probably late fall construction and ready for 2020.
Councillor Grace.
Oh, there we go. So I did send an email to Sue, and I think copied David and council on this, and I wondered if our CAO could provide any more information about the difference in the original amount of the $725,000 that we were expecting to go in to the future capital reserve based on the figures that we were given in January of 2018. But the information that Sue gave me indicated that we had $345,825 going into the 2018 budget, and she is on vacation, I guess, didn't have the information specifically. I wondered if you could throw any more light on where that additional about $380,000 landed.
I'll answer that not well, but I'll answer it with a little bit of a preface. I didn't say in my opening comments is I chose the word in the recommendation as a placeholder amount because our plan hopefully is that this development will pay for itself or we'll have the opportunity to generate some revenue. So that was one of the questions that came up. Why is it a placeholder? There is a potential that we use alternate funding strategies rather than drawing on the reserve. So that's one of the reasons why we use the term placeholder. There's a potential to pay it back as the project progresses. To answer, so that's a little bit of a preface. Sue was actually doing the reconciliation. There was some change with Council's direction on other projects to be funded out of the that I'll call it legacy, although we haven't named it yet. I haven't seen the final reconciliation on that yet, Councillor. But the money originally was to go into the future capital reserve, and Council directed us to put it into the legacy reserve, and that's where it is. She'd have to do the reconciliation about what's coming out from it. And certainly we could report back to you when she's back in the office.
Further questions? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too had sent in some questions in advance. I just want to express some concern, and hopefully, you'll be able to answer the question and start to perhaps include it. When you say that the overall project will have three components, the fourth component that's not there has to do with all of the natural lands that are hazard lands along the Mill Creek, which sets up potential for a different kind of park setting. And that's sort of been talked about in the midst here. So I just think it would be appropriate to, as you're talking about employment lands and an outdoor sport complex, don't forget that there's an incredible natural asset and a natural landscape that now just has come into the provincial land or the municipal land inventory that it's deserving of a place on the list all by itself, because it will have special considerations to make sure that it's protected, but also to make sure that it's usable by the general public. I did want to ask, though, in your report, there's a comment there. Council approved the purchase of the property to develop the sports complex and, if appropriate, develop a portion of the remainder of the site for potential employment use. How will this expression, if appropriate, how do you see that, what's going to be the trigger that means that it is appropriate? Do you have a sense yet of what would drive that? Because there is a question there, if appropriate. So how will council potentially be involved in that determination? And when do you see that sort of fitting into the mix?
Thank you very much for the questions. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to address the first one, there is about 10 to 12 acres on site that is environmentally protected. Staff have heard the ideas expressed, and the Recreation Master Plan does cover a number of elements. So it is the primary purpose is for the outdoor sports facility, but we are sensitive that there is 10 to 12 acres of environmentally protected, and that would be a very valuable recreation space as well. So we haven't forgot that. You're quite right. We don't mention it as often as we could or should. So we'll do better at that. But that is an opportunity for sure to see that. I think to answer your other question, I think some of these studies will start to narrow the scope. When we look at the servicing costs, we need to do a cost benefit of providing a service to the site and the value of the property and the business interest of the property. And all of those elements will knit together to say, is it appropriate that we actually create employment lands on the site? It may be that the business case does not support it when we get there, or we may not find a potential partner, or it may be such that it's only warehousing that's viable there, and that may not be what we want there. So there's a number of triggers that will be answered through the studies that we're planning, and this is what the funding is for, that will help us make a recommendation to council or update council depending on the timing of it on whether it's go or no go.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Hey, thanks, John. John can be my IT guy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for clarity to the CAO. So you say in the report that council previously approved the $40,000 as part of the municipal budget. So is the placeholder funding, the amount of funding available for the administration to use during the next few months actually $190,000, or is the amount the 40 part of the 150?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the 40 is not part of the 150. The 40 is specific to the design of the recreation component. We've divided this project into, and for those of you that haven't seen the report, or for clarity, the overall project is the overall development, and we'll be addressing things like zoning, traffic, servicing, archaeological, any of those kind of site overall. And then at the same time we have a sub-project going on, which is led by community services, which is the development of that specific site, and the 40,000 has already been approved by council and will be used to advance the design of that. So that there are two separate pots of money. Will we need 150? I can't tell you. I think that answers your question.
So just to be clear, we have $190,000 toward this particular project in 2018 if we approve this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, but I would say that our plan isn't to put all of the money. So I wouldn't say that it's now one pot of 190. In my head, it's still two separate pots, two separate projects, but close together.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment about the site, and a lot of excitement building in the community. There's over 1,200 ball players in this community. I know there's some interest in soccer and beach volleyball and some other things. Of course, the commercial space for employment lands and so on and so forth. So I encourage people to take a drive by out there, and a lot of soil being moved and shaping taking place. And I support this $150,000. I think there are going to be things that come up that will require some funding over the 6-9 months, and so we don't have to come back to council each time to support whether it's $5,000, $10,000, or $20,000 to keep the process moving. We invested significantly in this 150-acre parcel of land, and it's good to see that the Consolidated Sports Complex is moving forward. I think there's a lot of good support in the community for it. So thanks for the report, David.
Okay, any further comments? All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed, if any? That's carried. So, and we will bring this recommendation forward in council meeting so we can get it done before there is an amendment. There will be an amendment to the council agenda so that we can deal with it before lame duck. So, the next item on the agenda then is communications petitions for committee of the whole information. There's 5 items there, some minutes from different of our standing committees, and a notice of a local planning appeal tribunal hearing here in this office. So we'll move down then to the next item on the agenda. It's an information report for report of department heads and information report on our corporate social media, and our communication specialist, Laura Moscone, will present. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the report says, we are in the process of introducing corporate social media accounts for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So Community Services has been successfully running accounts on these platforms for a number of years, and they have found it to be a very useful tool for two-way communication with the public. So now we will be building on the success of these accounts as we transition them over from the Parks Rec username to Saugeen Shores ON. So they will be transitioned from the community services accounts to corporate accounts, and transitioning the existing accounts allows us to offer more content to the public while maintaining the same follower base. So the public will continue to see community services content, while also they will now be seeing relevant updates from other departments. So that can include election updates, tax due dates, service disruptions, anything like that. So the corporate accounts will provide a useful tool to increase two-way communication, which was identified as an external objective in our corporate communication strategy, and it also supports priority 2 of our corporate strategic plan, Enhance Operational Effectiveness, which includes improving communications mechanisms and increasing access to information. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Laura. Any questions of Laura? Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the report. I think it's a great thing that we're doing this, and appreciate your work on it. I guess my question is with regard to how it'll be managed, and how. So, when these were Parks and Recreation accounts, they were managed directly by the Director of Community Services, and so how will it be managed across the organization? Perhaps you could just give us some words on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have a plan in place, so I will be directly managing the accounts. We have a process for the rest of 2018 where I will be collecting information from the other departments, and then I will be approving the content and placing it online.
Further questions? Thank you very much, Laura. So that is the end of our agenda. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councillor Madison and Councillor Rich. All in favor?